YouTube. Hello, Clint. My buddy Clint, who I call Clint the Scout. And, if I'm the only one in the whole world that gets to call him Clint the Scout, then I'm just going to be the one to call him Clint the Scout because he's my scout. But tonight, we got something special and fun for you because we are doing the Larry the GM prediction show. And if you guys want to have fun with us, we will do that, and we're going to document the predictions tonight from the show. You will be on the chat, documented with your predictions, and Clint and I will be documented, and I will write. If we get some good input, I will even write your predictions down on an article that I will put in the website if we get enough input. So that's where we're going. And Clint, welcome to the show. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well, Larry. How about you?
I am doing good because Clint, as I said in a video yesterday, this is my favorite time of the year. And because Larry the GM grew up as a small boy in Wisconsin, and baseball season meant that the long winter of the misery was over
Yeah.
or was soon be over. There was hope. I wasn't going to have to be freezing any longer, and so opening day, spring training, all these things mean a lot to me, and this is my favorite time of year. And so I'm excited, and I'm excited that we have an Astro season to talk about. Hey guys, if you haven't read the website, go to the website, check some things out. We got the official opening day season predictions article there. You'll see a bunch of details. Clint and I probably aren't going to cover all that stuff, but we'll talk about some of it as we go through our predictions. And we're just going to have some fun tonight, guys. What I would also ask, if you have not subscribed to the channel on YouTube, please do that. That's going to help us a lot as we build the YouTube up. And if you would like this video, please do that. So the chat is open. So get your chats in as we go on the YouTube side. And if you are really, really, really bold and you want to come in and appear on the screen, we can even talk about that. So, Clint, anything else we should start before we just get into it?
No, I don't think so. This is also one of my favorite times of the year due to the fact that we have the Masters in 2 weeks, and then obviously you have opening day tomorrow. So there's no better time than right now to have baseball and for me selfishly a little bit of golf going on at the same time. So I'm ready. I think the Astros are ready. I think all the fans are ready. That's my biggest takeaway. And let's get into it.
All right, let's get into it. So, I showed you in the article that we would talk about these various topics, and I gave you my answers near the end of the article. Clint and I are going to go back and forth as we start. If you've got opinions and you want to jump in the chat, please do so. But Clint, I am going to document your opinions as we go, and I'll do this. Let's cut and paste, copy, paste. All right. If somebody else wants to jump in with their bold predictions, Clint, what do you think the Astros are going to do for their record this year, and why?
Um, I know a lot of Astros fans may not like what I might say right here. So I have them at, I have projected at 87,
Oof.
75.
Wow.
Okay. One of my biggest fears about why, or one of my concerns is the starting rotation. Last year we were spoiled by an abundance of wealth, and I think we're overestimating that heading into 2023.
Yep.
Um,
And pretty
I firm,
much, pretty
I
much
firmly,
the war heat map agrees with you on
yeah.
that.
So I firmly believe that we'll see a McCullers return after the All Star break. I know we talked about that a little bit before we got on. And I think that just poses a really big threat. And I think you're asking a lot of guys like, especially Hunter Brown and Luis Garcia, to step up and become your 3 and 4 starters. We're going to walk into some really, I think we're going to walk into some really great years for Fromber and Javier. But one of my biggest things is it's a 162 game season. Anything can happen. But it does also play into what my surprise player pick will be.
All
Uh,
right.
but I will start with that. That's my projected record. And then I know you came up with what 92-7.
I went 92-70. Now, just so people can kind of understand the content in the article, like the the uh, the war heat map method. If you look at the additive war of this team, and you say, okay, well, the average war is like, I don't remember exactly. I wrote it in there,
It's the seventh
40.6.
highest WAR, I think, for the league
Yeah,
itself. Yeah.
the Astros have the seventh highest WAR. Okay,
Mhm.
that is that, guys. They've been top three for a long time. They have the seventh highest WAR going into this year, and by that WAR method, and their WAR is 48.2 minus the 40.6. That's 7 games. Well, it's 8 games over 500.
Yeah.
And guys, that's 89 games. So Clint's at 87. I'm at 92. That's what the WAR model would predict. Now, you may say, Larry, I don't know anything about this model. Well, just understand that that's been behind the way I predicted the Astros seasons for like the last 5. Okay. And when I was
Mhm.
predicting they would win 100 games, it's because the WAR model said they could win like 98, 99 games. And that it was insane to think that. But that's where we're at with this team. So now, Clint, do you think the Astros will win the AL West?
I do think they win the AL West. I don't think they.
Yes.
I think they win it by 4 games or less.
Okay.
I'm a little. That also plays in the projected record. I know everybody likes to poke fun at the Rangers
Mm.
and poke fun at the other teams, but a lot of especially the Mariners are in a situation where they're working with a little bit more I would say flexibility regarding their roster, but also the payroll that kind of comes with it. So they
Correct.
still navigate that and build around these core guys like Rodriguez in center field. And they obviously made a good trade for Teoscar, which I
Hmm.
thought was pretty good for them. They needed a veteran presence with a big bat that kind of fits into that middle of the lineup, which I think is going to be really nice. And then obviously they've got Castillo coming back. So I don't want to sit there and act like that they're not a posing threat. They may actually be the second best team in the AL in general. And so you've
Right.
got the two, what I believe are the two best teams in the American League who are going to play each other a ton. Um, and so that being said, and I also don't want to discredit the Rangers as well. I know they brought in Jacob DeGrom. They will see him sometimes. And I would expect that some of that starts to translate into just the Astros, facing a little bit more competition in that division, throughout the year. But I do believe 4 games or less, but Astros do win the West.
Fun fact: the Rangers' starting pitching projects to have better WAR than the Astros. And just, I mean, I know that it's hard for us to understand, but they did sign the best pitcher in baseball. Okay, I mean that kind of happens. Now the question is, how many games will he actually pitch?
Yes.
And so, what's interesting by that methodology, the Angels, the Rangers, and the Mariners all predicted to win 84 or 83 games. So it's going to be if that plays out, even if 2 of those play out to be that,
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be a tough. It's going to be a tight season. All right, postseason predictions. So you've got them getting in, but I would assume that's probably the 3 seed, right?
That would be the 3 seed. Yes.
So what are you thinking? You thinking they win the
I
ALDS? Or
I
you
think that
think
they end up winning the ALCS, but
the,
I cannot give you a strict prediction on the World Series
so
because
you think they get to the World Series?
I think they can get to the World Series. Yes.
All right.
And I have two my two biggest attributing factors to that are we have one of the best closers in baseball,
I have a feeling this is also going to be your surprise player.
and we also have No, it's not going to be my surprise player. It might be, but
Okay.
I don't think. I think my surprise player is going to catch everybody off guard because I've seen your charts, and your charts doesn't like him very much. But I have a
I
gut
think I
feeling.
know where you're going.
I have a gut feeling from video I've seen and things like that. But I also think Kyle Tucker is in for a massive year, and I feel like if Jordan is going to be Jordan, who he always is, they're going to get an I say exponentially better version of Kyle Tucker in 2023.
Correct.
And you're talking about two left-handed power bats that could carry this team through a postseason.
Okay.
And I'm
Wow.
banking on that happening, and then I'm also just banking on the veteran presence being heavy in those moments, and Ryan Presley being as great as he is. I think he's still got plenty in the tank to get those outs when we need it.
So is Tucker your batting MVP as well?
Tucker is my batting MVP. I'll give that
There we
away.
go. Well, I mean, it's guaranteed then, because if Clint and I both agree, it's guaranteed. I mean, Clint, we went to Vegas, and I've never made a sports bet in my life. I've made 2 sports bets, one on Tucker and one on Alvarez for AL MVP. So that's how serious about the year I think those two could have. And people are saying, "Well, Larry, I predicted the Astros would win 92 games." Well, I think the AL side of this is going to. Well, let me say this: I think the National League is going to kind of beat up on the American League in interleague play, just because I think there's some really really strong National League teams. In fact, that's kind of what that model shows. That you got 4 teams above 90, 90 victories or more in the National League, and so I think when they play the American League, we're going to have the American League be on the losing side of interleague play, and so I think that's going to suppress the overall records, and even the Yankees and the Blue Jays, who are predicted to be fairly good as well, in the best in the American League, by that method. I'm just telling you the method, guys. I think that the Astros at 92 wins are going to be right there with them.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, I think the Astros could win the ALCS. I think Tucker is going to be the MVP, because it's going to be so clear how dependent the Astros are on batting. Because I agree with you. I think the pitching may have its challenges. And are you saying Presley's your pitching MVP? Or are you going somewhere else?
I want to, I feel like that's the easy route just because of how exceptional he is. But I think, and it's probably going to sound counterintuitive because I said it's asking a lot of him, but I also believe, based off of what we've seen year over year, I am very intrigued by what Luis Garcia can do.
Look at you.
And I also believe that there might be a little bit of magic in the shortening of the windup.
Yeah.
I know people may not like the whole he's no longer rocking the baby to sleep and he's not rocking that cradle, but I'm looking at it from a glass half full ability standpoint, and we have seen Luis Garcia have some great stuff and pitch well in some big spots. And I think that playoff game against Seattle, when he pitched as well as he did, is a huge spark for how he's going to pitch in 2023. And that's who I'm going to list as MVP, not because he's going to be the best Astros pitcher, but I think he's going to be the most improved Astros pitcher whose performance makes the difference.
Okay. So who's your surprise player, Clint?
Okay. I'm going to get a lot of heat for this. I'm going to get a ton of heat for this.
I know what you're going to say. In fact, I'm going to type it as you say it.
My surprise player, and I don't know if Larry knows who I'm going to say because this is going to be interesting. I firmly believe we're going to be surprised by Forrest Whitley this season.
Look at that. Look, I wrote it. I typed it. I know that's where you're going.
Yeah. So
tell the people why, Clint.
I think a lot of people forget how great of a prospect Forrest Whitley was when he got drafted. You're talking about a 5-pitch guy, upper 90s, young, long, talented, capable. And he kind of got lost in the shuffle through injuries, and then he's been plagued by a lot of it. But if I'm not mistaken, he's going to be 25.
I think it's his 26.
Or maybe he's 26 now. Maybe I was thinking 25 going on 26. But He's 25, so he is
He's
25.
25.
Okay, I was like
Okay.
25 going on 26. But I think this is the year where the injuries don't work. If you've noticed, he's been and it may be one of those things where we don't see him as a starting pitcher.
Hmm.
And maybe that's not the role that he fits right away. But I really like what he brings to the table in terms of the pitch mix, the talent, and most importantly, if you've watched him a little bit in spring training, he has worked really hard at relieving this whiplash delivery and really trying to focus on being a lot more smoother in that transition and that release point. To me, it feels like it might be the perfect recipe. So Jay, yes, I saw your comment about him coming up in September. I'm tempted to say that it might be a lot earlier than that, especially if he gets off to a really good start
Well, if there's injuries, right,
and injuries as well.
and there will be injuries, no pitching staff ever goes through the year without an injury or two. And of course, we have already got Lance McCullers
Mhm.
fulfilling a quota there, but they're likely. We were very very blessed last year in that we didn't have a lot of pitching injuries beyond McCullers and a few stints with others. But if this team does have two significant starting pitching injuries, I mean, for the first one, you could say, well, they're going to pencil in Blanco into the pitching rotation, and then you could see Whitley coming in and being that long reliever role,
Mhm.
or Belak. It's basically I think the next man up methodology would essentially be Belak and Whitley,
Right.
unless
And I
I'm
would
forget. And
and I would say that you see Whitley either before Belock or right in the same time, only because I guess I look at it this way. I think we've seen a ceiling with Brandon Belock.
hmm
We haven't seen anything of Forrest Whitley.
well, I mean, and this is Whitley's last option year, so
That as well.
he's they might as well, if they've got a lead, or they might as well get him in and play him,
Yeah.
because they're going to have to make a decision to pay him next year,
Or to let him
with
walk.
without any, and basically he's got to be on the team next year,
Right.
and there's no option available. And so what Clint referenced a little bit is, by my scoring system, Whitley's an F, because
Yep.
the projection systems are saying his ERA is going to be above, whether it's FIP is going to be above 5, and let's hope they're all wrong. I mean, I I tend to agree with a little bit of what Clint is saying, but I just know, what's out there, and nobody's a believer. Clint is the president of the Forrest Whitley fan club.
Yeah. I guess you could say to a fault.
He
I've been loyal
refuses
to
to
a
believe.
fault at this point, but I don't want to sit there and believe that it's not. There's not enough talent there to be tapped into, and that for him to play a role and to surprise us, I don't think that's too far fetched at this
No.
point. And he also has to know that there's a lot riding on this.
All right. So who is your rookie of the year?
Oh well, that's easy. That's easy.
Well, you're just gonna say Hunter Brown.
No, I was going to say Yainer Diaz.
Oh, yeah,
I
Ranger
think it's easy.
Diaz.
Larry, a lot of people don't remember this conversation we had about where the Astros were heading with Corey Lee and Yainer Diaz and kind of this 2023-2024 mix of how we were going to find some two catchers who were young, versatile, and played multiple positions, and how they were looking at almost changing the way you address the catcher position. I mean, I think that's what it ultimately comes down to.
Right.
And the kid has pretty much done everything that you could ask him to do.
Right.
And I don't think it's going to stop. And if everybody's been looking at reading the article and looking at the plate appearances and looking at what's coming, he's going to have plenty of opportunity to prove himself. And I just think talent overcomes certain things, and he's an incredibly talented young man that came in as a no name in a trade.
Right.
And I think he's going to be our best rookie because number one, he's going to get the exposure, but I just think he's got the pop and ready to go. I mean,
Well, I went with Hensley. I went with Hensley for a very similar situation. Like, he's going to get a golden opportunity. I think Hensley is going to play almost 80% of the games at second base because I think they're going to move Dubon around the outfield, and so we'll talk about that, Jay. I'm not
Yeah.
specifically. I can pull up what I think the lineup's going to be, and there maybe even willing to tweak it based on a little bit of Diaz playing time. So, what you see in this table here in the blue table, I guess let me blow it up so everybody can folks and see it. So
Yeah,
you
let me know,
see,
Larry. I might be forcing you to jump around too much.
no, it's okay. But look at this playing time we've got here. Like, guys, we're gonna have Hensley, Dubon, and Diaz get nearly half a season of plate appearances, because I think what the so let's cover the Salazar issue a little bit while we're getting
Mhm.
some. So Jay, go ahead and throw your predictions in, guys. It's your time now. Clint and I have given you ours. Um, those three players are going to have a ton of playing time this year. Now, what's interesting about that is if Dubon doesn't perform, I think they may they. Well, what happens when Altuve and Brantley are both back, and if there's no other major injuries, Dubon is in a competition with Myers for who stays on the roster, and I'm not 100% sure how that plays out, but the playing time I've tried to allocate it where I was making some of those predictions along the way, but yeah, so this is the way I predicted the lineup in the beginning of the year, and then what I think will happen when Altuve and Brantley return, and in fact, who's going to be on the bench, and then what I would do in the postseason, not knowing what I know now, although if Jokes is what Jokes could be, um, it could be beautiful. Now let's talk about Salazar for just a minute. But Jay, here's where my predictions are. It'll be Pena, Bregman, Alvarez, Abreu, Tucker, McCormick, Hensley, Myers, Maldonado, and the only question is do you work Diaz in as a DH and put Alvarez in left, and therefore put McCormick in at center and Myers is out and Diaz is in? That might happen. I went with a more conservative approach that Dusty will start the season with Myers in center and McCormick in left because that's what he knows, and Dusty really likes what he knows. But I think the guy's in love with Diaz as well, and I think that was part of the conversation. Which this will transition to why Salazar. So as I wrote in the article, and as I said in the video last night, I simply think Diaz beat Corey Lee out for the backup catcher role. And Clint, I know you agree with that.
I agree with that. Yes.
And so you start with that, and then you have to decide, okay, well, if Diaz is your backup catcher, yet if I'm even close, they want to have Diaz DH 100 plate appearances in the season. That doesn't work. You can't have your backup catcher DHing 100 plate appearances, or you run the risk of losing your DH for 30 games during the season. The balance of that is it's your third catcher. So therefore you need a third catcher, but that third catcher's almost never going to play. Because if you want a backup catcher, you're going to put Diaz in as to be the primary backup catcher. And when will this third catcher play? And they looked at it like we don't want it. We don't want to do that to Corey Lee because we want Corey Lee ready to be in competition with Diaz as the starting catcher in 24. Now, granted, if he's lost this competition in 23, he may be the backup catcher in 24, but we can't have him sitting on the bench the entire year. My answer for that is run the train back and forth with Diaz and Lee. I just think they said, no, Diaz is too valuable, Larry, and we're going to have Diaz here all year. And we plan to, at least early on, we're going to have Salazar be there so that we can experiment with Diaz as the DH. Now, I think that need for Diaz the DH drops significantly when Brantley gets back. And so that may be so they may switch this as soon as Brantley comes back. Salazar's the one going to the minors, and they'll run the risk occasionally of having. There won't be a need for Diaz to play as much at DH
Mhm.
once Brantley's back. So the risk that they're managing is, maybe once a week, and they'll just run the risk in that one game that they lose Maldonado and they pull Diaz from the DH role. I mean, Maldonado played with really bad injuries in
Yeah.
August and September, so
You're
you have
gonna
to carry
you're
him
gonna
out of
need
the
a lot to
stretcher.
take him off the field. Is essentially how this
Yeah,
is going to play out. I would say the other caveat to this, Larry, is if is one of those guys, and Diaz beat Corey Lee out. So Diaz needs an entire year of working underneath Maldonado
right.
in preparation to essentially take over the pitching staff in 2024. I mean, we cannot see. I can't see a world where Maldonado's catching again for the Astros in 2024. Now, I could be wrong, but just from age and everything else that's coming into play, I think you bring a lot of risk in. And so I definitely can see why you would leave him there all year, let him play when you can, and let him be a sponge. I think that's more than I think that's the formula that they've come up with.
Right. And so, guys, the point is like, I know some people think like this is an indictment on Lee. I don't think so. I think they're basically protecting Lee and want to develop Lee in AAA, and are saying like we can't put Lee in a position of being the third catcher on this team. He won't develop. His skills will diminish, and
Yeah.
let's just
So
leave him
the
in
case of
AAA. And
Clint,
all this changes if Lee just like tears up AAA too.
yeah.
Like so,
The other thing I think is I think starting the season like this prepares them better to save and hold on to options on some of these guys, especially like Lee, because it's like if he's going to be there. I mean, I know you have to spend one right away to put him there.
So Jay,
But
when Sports 790 said that Martin will catch 100 games this year and Salazar the rest, who's they in that sentence? Who's saying they believe? Because I think that is okay. I'm on video, so I won't say what I really think. I think that's just wrong. I think guys, Diaz will be the backup catcher on this team, and when there's a spot, well, okay. Jay, just trust me. Okay. Diaz is the backup catcher. And they're bringing three catchers here so that they can utilize Diaz beyond just the games that he would be available as a backup catcher, which call it 40, 50, 60, whatever. They want Diaz to play more than 50 games. They want Diaz to play another 30 games at DH, and they want Diaz to play another 10-ish games, maybe 20-ish games at first base. That's what they want to do. That's how much Diaz has sold them on his bat. And they don't want to just but they at the same time are not going to say, well, we're going to bring Diaz up and never play him at catcher. That would be silly. So that's my thoughts about that. All right, Clint, anything else to add to that?
no, like I said, I think the option thing is a real deal. I think especially
Yeah.
for Lee. I mean, yeah, you spend one to send him down right away, but like understanding what Salazar is and just think of the whole concept. And then I think that's the hard part to get through to people is, well, they put him on the roster. He must be there for a reason. I said, yeah, but there's a different reason. There's always a little bit of a caveat to every decision here. And I just cannot live in a world or believe in a world that Diaz is not going to play a lot more than obviously Salazar. But I think what they want to do is ultimately is they felt that this was the right way to use Diaz right now to test and progress his development to determine what he will look like in the future. And then obviously with Salazar, we only know that much about him because he's been put on the roster right now. I mean, if the argument was to be made that way, it's a fair argument. We know who he is now more so than ever because he's on the 25-man roster.
Well, they've kind of used. What's strange is if you understand. I mean, I would have to get Astros Future to really to validate or amplify on this, but they kind of did this with Salazar a little bit last year and the year before in the minor leagues. Is they kind of floated them through the system wherever the need was for the
Yeah.
backup catcher. Oh, we need a backup catcher and AAA for a week. Well, but send Salazar there. We don't, don't we don't care. Uh, he's fine. He can just be. He's like he's been the backup catcher for the system for two or three 2 years, right? And this is just an
Well,
extension of what they've done to Salazar.
well, and my other point would be this is we don't has Altuve doesn't get hurt. This would be a completely
Yeah,
different discussion. Number one, but number two, I mean, you're dealing with the absence of two veteran players, two impact players that and what I feel like they're doing is they're mitigating their risk and having whatever pieces they need to have in play to fulfill these roles because Hensley Dubon can play second base. You know, you've got the outfield situation. Alvarez is not going to play left field every day. It's just not going to happen that way. And so you've got a lot to balance. And so a guy like Jolks with his versatility, infield and outfield, at least gives you that opportunity. But Salazar, like we said, if they need to rotate Diaz there's even potential that Diaz could, play first base. But if you really wanted to push it, you could technically try him in left field if you
right,
really wanted to. But
right.
I just think what it speaks to is how they're going to navigate this first month without Brantley, and then obviously 2 months. So I would assume probably a little bit more for Altuve.
Right. Yeah. So I've got Altuve coming back July 4th. It's the ultimate Independence Day present because they start a series at home on the 4th, and
Yeah.
so that's what I think is going to happen. All right. So Jay, I know you're here. Do you have your predictions? What do you think the Astros record is? Anybody else that's here, and jump into the chat. Let us know you're here. What Jay? What do you have for the Astros record? Do you have them winning the West? What's your postseason prediction? What do you think the batting MVP, the pitching MVP, and your surprise player and your rookie? So, Jay, it's up to you. While you're putting that into the chat, I will let's amplify a little bit on the joke situation. Why jokes over Dearden or the other options they might have had? Why did they go Why did they go jokes over Matichevic or Dearden? And here's the thing. There's a little bit. Clint and I talked about this from pre-show. There's a little bit of disconnect in the logic here. Okay, so the logic for jokes over the other options is he had more time at AAA. By that logic, they should have Lee in playing on the roster because he had more time than Salazar at AAA. That's why I'm telling you they're not bringing Salazar for the same dynamic. They're bringing Jokes. They're bringing Jokes to play. They're bringing Salazar as an emergency. Uh, you know, they're basically
Option.
running a 25-man roster, guys, and Salazar just there in case Maldonado gets hurt. That's really what they're doing. And so they're and Dana Brown said it like I just trust what I see in Jokes more than I do with Dearden yet and with Matichevic yet. So all right, so Jay's got the Astros with 98 wins. He's got the Mariners and the Astros dogging it out in the ALCS. That'll be tough. So you obviously here, Jay, you thinking the Mariners are going to be good, and I think that's right.
Yeah.
Jay, who do you have for your batting MVP and your pitching MVPs and your surprise player? But that's the thing with jokes, right, guys? It's a comfort level. Now that's not to say that doesn't change if Jokes comes here and doesn't really perform great in the matter of 3 or 4 weeks. They and Dearden's down there tearing it up in AAA.
Yeah.
Don't be surprised if they change that. The other piece of this that I talked about a little bit last night, and I don't really like bringing it up, but it could be that these guys are either being showcased for a trade, or that they already have a trade in place for either Dearden or Matijevic, and then we're going to find out about that trade in the next 24 hours.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. And Jay goes chalk with Tucker for batting MVP, and he goes Javier for pitching MVP, which are great choices, Jay. So, all right, Jay, I'm gonna put your predictions in. Clint, take over while I type this in, and
Well, I think the other point that we're missing, and this is kind of what plays into the whole Dearden speculation, is the fact that he needs to be on the roster by the end of the season to avoid the Rule 5 draft.
yeah.
So they have to make a decision if they have something in him they want to keep. If they trade him, obviously that solves their problem because they wouldn't have to deal with that. But Larry and we watched Dearden hit the baseball
Yeah.
pretty hard in San Antonio last year. So, I've always been high on him since I've seen that. He's performed well, and obviously it makes sense. 73% of his time last year was in Double A, but he came up and showed a lot of promise in spring training. So, I think we're also factoring in how does this if Dearden goes down there and spends the next 3 weeks to a month raking at Triple A, and someone and I know it's kind of different because Dearden doesn't prototype as a center fielder, but if someone like Jake Myers is just not doing it, I think there's also a discussion to be had there as well. And if it was me selfishly, I would hope they don't trade Dearden yet. I think they could still wait to see if he can pop with a little more value, especially if he goes down there in AAA and performs well. But I also think it just speaks to them understanding what they had in Matijevic, and I think also the part of it that we kind of forget with Matijevic is Jolks. You can move him around the infield, and you can do a little bit more with him than you could with Matijevic. It just is what it is. And obviously, if you had to sit there and tell me that they were going to start Abreu and Diaz and Matijevic wasn't going to play much at all, it would totally make sense why he's not there.
Yeah, yeah. So, guys, I actually think that Matijevic is a really interesting trade option piece. I mean, if you want to say like who's getting kind of frozen out by this whole thing, is Matijevic. I mean, he's like, wait a minute, by this logic, Matijevic should be here because he was the one that actually played in the major leagues last year. But I just think they think um, they just trust jokes. And the other thing is like, so when I was writing my initial version of this, I said it was Matijevic and Dearden would be on the team. I didn't have Salazar on the team, obviously, and then but because I thought they would want the left-handed bat production against a righty pitcher, right? Well, here we go. Jolks is down here with his overall average for versus OPS versus righties was better than Manicevic's last year. Of course, now
Mm-hmm.
Manicevic had to face some major league pitching for part of that, but um, you know, it's just interesting that you know that basically Manicevic and Jokes were at the same level overall OPS, and then Jokes has these reverse splits, and you know it it just tells you what their thoughts are. Is there anybody else in the house that wants to give predictions? Because it is opening day eve. So did you have a surprise player, Jay, beyond Hunter Brown as your best rookie? Which that's fair. I just I just think it should be. Let's just hope Hunter Brown is everything we think he's going to be. I think he could be. Hunter Brown could be amazing. I
Yep.
just hope he doesn't get hurt. I just hope he doesn't. We get to see everything we think Hunter Brown's going to be. Do you have another surprise player, Jay? Um, beyond what you have put in there before. All right. Is there any other topics to talk about? Anything else? Astros. Astros. Do we want to hear the Larry to GM trades? Like Larry to GM, I was on the phone this week. I've tried to make 2 trades. Here's my off the wall trades, and then like you guys are gonna. This is gonna blow your mind. if these trades happen, Clint. This is kind of like when I was talking about trading for Mancini 3 months, a month before it
Yeah.
happened, right? This is me talking about like what I'm doing at the trade deadline, if not before. All I really need is for the Giants and the Boston Red Sox to figure out they're not in it. Okay, I need them to Boston. We're rooting for Boston and the Giants to start out really slowly and figure out they should go into sell mode with these two players. Alex Wood has 1 year on it, 1 year on his contract, $12.5 million. Like if the Giants are not in it, they don't need Alex Wood.
No.
Alex Wood is left-handed, by the way, guys, and I've been whining and complaining that this team needs another left-handed pitcher in it. Now, Alex Wood's a starter, but he's exactly the mode that I want with another pitcher for this team that I can put in as the fourth or fifth starter on this team. Then, if I get all the pitching, I get Lance McCullers back, I got all my starting pitching, then I can even move Alex Wood to yeah, I will, Brandon. Definitely, I will get to that. Uh, so Alex Wood could be that long reliever in a lefty reliever in the bullpen that this team probably is going to need because Brandon, I think this team did really well against left-handed hitting, but if you look at the 21 stats versus left-handed hitting, they were not near as well for a lot of these pitchers. So, Stanek is not going to pitch as well as he pitched last year, and well, okay, that's like almost stating the obvious, right? Because he had a 1.15 ERA. But his FIP was significantly more than that, and that's really the way to think about Stanek. The other player I want to trade for is for Blyer from Boston. I think that's going to be even harder because I think Boston's going to be in this. I need Boston really to start out really really bad, and for
Yeah.
them to just get like for the Boston fans to say just shut it down and get let's sell all these damn disappointing players and get something else, and then we can get Blyer. And I hate it when I have to put the Astros sides of these deals, but Blyer from Matijevic is a pretty good match, guys, as far as trade value. And basically, Alex Wood, because he makes $12.5 million, the trade value website says that he doesn't have. It's a negative 6.5 trade value, right? So I could basically just give them money, but instead I'm going to ask the Giants to pay $4 million of that salary, and
Mhm.
then I'm going to give them Joe Perez and Bly Madras because I don't think either one of those are going to have a role on this team this year or even next year. So that's what I'll do. All right, Brandon, let's talk about it. So Clint, any thoughts on those trades as I try to address
So
Brandon's question?
for me, the Alex Wood one is really intriguing. I think you can fill multiple spots with that from a starter that can obviously pitch a lot of innings. And I guess if you get him early enough, he could pitch 100 innings for this team if it all was said and done or more. But I also think he's kind of an interesting, quirky type of pitcher that can cause a lot of problems, especially
It
for
would be a
big bat.
change of pace from the other pitchers, huh?
Yes, and so that's the one thing about the Astros. If you look down that rotation from, I know Javier doesn't quite pump high 90s, but it looks like it. But then you've got Garcia and Brown who can pump high 90s with regularity, and then you throw in a quirky, odd goofball like Alex Wood, who's all junk and a lot of play with that baseball. I think it's kind of a unique fit. I've always enjoyed the way he pitches because I feel like it's always a little more old school in that manner.
Right.
Um, and the Blyer one's interesting. The problem that face, and I think what it really is ultimately going to come down to is Chris Sale going to be as good as he can be
Yeah.
in 23? And if he is, then they're going to stay in it and they're
Right.
not going to give up. Maybe at the trade deadline, maybe, but that's Boston's just such a hard team to read. We thought and so I wouldn't really lean on Red Sox giving up, but who knows? I think it's all for the 6 weeks are going to tell us a lot, and we might find some surprise teams that are needing to get out from underneath some contracts or wanting to make some moves, and the Astros just have to be ready. And I think that also plays into why we're seeing certain guys. We've hinted at that with some of these guys being on the roster, not being on the roster that therefore, and you know, I think hopefully we stay healthy from a pitching perspective because it's gonna be a little. I still think it's gonna be pretty dicey.
All right, so Brandon, I want you to get your predictions ready while I answer this question. Right, I want your projected record for the Astros, whether they win the AL West, what your postseason prediction for them will be, who the batting MVP is, who the pitching MVP, who your surprise player is, and who is your best rookie or your rookie of the year. All right, so to answer your question, you can see, so this is kind of why I have adopted this report card style um, methodology. So rather than focus on purely the FIP number or the FIP minus number, um, I've translated that into a letter grade that most people who've ever taken a day of a higher education or even high school, right? You know these grades, and so what to think about is this is the 22 column, right? And this is what the grades project in 23. Now, as we go through the season, um, I will I will probably hold the projection grade and I'll add a column to this and we'll see how the current Astros are doing by the grade methodology. Okay. So players that we would not expect now, I know when I say this, people are gonna like, what the hell are you talking about, Larry? Javier is great. I don't, guys, these are not my numbers. These are my grades applied to the numbers that are being projected by the computer models, right? They do not think Javier is going to be as great as he was last year. Okay. That's just the way the cookie crumbles. I mean, I will be rooting as hard for Javier to prove them all wrong and say, look, we all knew these models didn't know what the hell they were talking about. Okay, well, Hunter Brown didn't really have enough innings to have this number in here, but they say Hunter Brown's going to be really, really good. Um, they do predict Montero, Abreu, and Neris all take a slight step back. The one that I'm most worried about of those three is Montero. I think Montero could be a C on this chart, guys, and I wouldn't have argued with it.
I was
As,
gonna say that, Larry. I said I think you could almost see him being a B in that column. There's
yes,
just so little to really. I guess what I'm saying is 2022 was almost it felt like an anomaly
right. Montero
when
has
we look
never
at his
been the
career.
pitcher he was in 2022. Okay, that
Yeah.
maybe most Astros fans don't want to hear that, but that's guys. When you come to me and you ask me questions, or we're gonna have discussions, we're gonna have real talk. Okay, I love my Astros more than anybody, and part of my theory about these things is it's better to have real talk about what they really are versus like rah rah like cheerleader talk. And I gave you my answer on Stanek. Stanek is not going to be the pitcher he was in 22. No, like I invite Ryan Stanek to prove me wrong, right? Like I've proved those projections wrong. But that's so the two biggest candidates for significant regression in the bullpen, I think, are Montero and Stanek. Martinez also had a little bit of like he may have like a little bit of sophomore slump. His
Yeah.
true skill level. Maybe, yeah, guys, being a C pitcher on here is not bad. You'll see that as we go through the other teams. Like the C is not a bad rating. It's just like we had the best pitching staff in the major leagues last year. No, there's not too many pitching staffs had 5 A pluses like or 6 A pluses because we have Verlander as well. So that's just
Yeah.
that doesn't happen. That's why they won the World Series. The Astros in 22 rested on their pitching to get to the World Series, and in 23 it's going to be up to the bats to
Yeah.
get to the postseason. All right, so Brandon, that's my answer. Did you have any more questions? Jay, do you have any more questions? Or anybody else that's in the chat? More questions? Love to hear it. Otherwise, Clint and I will wrap up here in just a few minutes. So this is like your 2 minute warning. Um, And like Clint said, his mystery pitcher is Whitley, and he's like those models are crap, Larry. Forrest Whitley is gonna be a B level pitcher at least, and I'm gonna prove He's going to
And so
prove them all
we
wrong.
talked about this a little bit more, and so we talked about him potentially using the sinker more, right?
Right.
And getting a little bit more spin on the baseball, creating a little bit more control. But and that was one of the things I had been thinking about him going over with watching him, and I said if he starts to work more into that realm of, it's kind of what McCullers started to become, with a little bit more of a sinker, a little bit more creativity in terms of
Right.
how he gets outs and not being so strikeout dependent and wipeout dependent. We could definitely see a turn for the positive. So I'm basing a lot of that on his talent and his ability to adapt. And I think Josh Miller and them on the pitching staff, or the coaching, the pitching coaches really understand some of this. I honestly believe, looking at this, I still believe your second best reliever next year, and I say next year, here in 2023, is probably going to be Brian Abreu.
Right.
I just the progress he made, but I feel like the ability and everything is there, and so I'm not ready to give up on what Whitley came in to be, and I don't think he will be what they thought he was going to be, which was a big power pitcher that blew people off the planet and then dropped curveballs in that made them look stupid. I think he could be a nice, formidable contact. I'm going to create soft contact. I will get the strikeouts when I can. I think he could be a really great pitcher that way, and so
Right.
I'm going to lean on optimism for that.
Well, and there's several scouts that said that what the Astros are now doing with Forrest Whitley is what they should have been doing 3 years, 4 years ago. And
Yeah.
so, hey, maybe we'll find out. Maybe the world does know a little bit more than sometimes the Astros pitching development group that just has a long track record of getting it right. All right, guys. Well, there you go. There's the season prediction show. Larry and Clint, a little bit of reality check for Astros fans. It's going to be a good year, but it may be a lot more stressful as far as their record and getting to the AL West division crown may give. I mean, I already got a lot of gray hair, so I don't know how many more gray hairs I need to get, but
Yeah.
it's going to be a challenge. But I think it's going to be a fun year. I think one of the
Mhm.
things that even during the season last year, Clint, that was frustrating to me is we kept having basically two significant issues that we could never resolve. And
Right.
when I thought they had resolved them at the trade deadline, we still refused to use the solution. So we have solved one of those problems. Okay. Abreu is going to be great at first base. And so I think Jose Abreu is going to slot in as a 4 or 5 or even maybe 6 hitter on this lineup, and he's going to love it. And he's going to be driving people in all day long. So, am I going to any games this year? I think so. I don't know when. Clint and I are going to open invitation. Clint and I are going to go to some missions games, and when the Hooks come to San Antonio, Clint and I are going to go to some missions games,
Yep.
right? So you guys are welcome to come to San Antonio and hang out with Clint and me. And boy, if you ever go to a baseball game with Clint the scout and Larry the GM, I'm surprised people just didn't tell us to shut up in San Antonio Stadium
Yeah.
last year, Clint. We went to watch McCullers, and we kept going on and on about this Dearden guy. What the hell
Yeah.
is doing? Who's this Dearden guy?
Well, we had heard about him.
Right,
We had seen something. We just never seen him in person.
right. And it's
We
like,
saw the stats. We saw what was happening, and then all of a sudden, you watch him crank one over the right center field wall, and it's like, this kid's got some pop, man. Like, it's no joke. And then he did it. He didn't do it again, but did he do it again? I think it was a
he
double.
made like another double that night, and
Yeah,
then
he had
and
another
he made
double
some,
right in the gap that cracked right off the bat. And
then
guys,
he
I
like
don't.
powered somebody with his arm or something. Like it was
Yeah,
a
and then
great
he
defensive play.
right. And so I guess that's the other thing is, if you're ever watching those minor league games and you watch major league games, I think everybody knows there's a distinct sound, there's a distinct motion. It was like the time I watched Carlos Correa play for the Hooks back when I was in college, and you just watch him flicking a baseball across the diamond faster than some of these guys can crow hop that ball from the outfield in. and you're watching him hit balls in the channel, there's just a distinct, and that sound that Dearden made with that bat a couple times was just like, this kid is. There's something here, and that's why I'm like, God, I hope they don't trade him, but if they are, let's maximize that value or however that works. But yeah, it's a little off topic, Larry, but there's definitely a lot of fun to be had watching those games.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Clint, like, what the heck? I mean,
Yeah.
we knew of Dearden, but like it was almost like Justin Dearden said, "Wait a minute, Larry the GM and Clint the Scout are in the house tonight. I am putting on a show," and that's what it felt like. All right, guys. Well, thanks for. Let's go Astros. Let's get ready to rain and let's have a good season. Thanks, guys, for joining us. Hope we will be here again. Like tomorrow, right? Is that what I'm doing? Like, oh no, okay. Here's what I'm doing. Tomorrow, you guys are getting the report card.
Mm-hmm.
Opening day report card. So you're gonna have. I mean, if you promise not to, don't screenshot this yet, guys. It's not final. Where is it? Hang on. There it is. There it is. This is not final because this version doesn't even this version. I don't even. I got mad at Jeff and Dearden still in here, right? But here's the report card versus report card, right?
Yep.
This is Astros report card. This is the White Sox report card. Notice that the White Sox have a lot of players that were pretty much crap last year. That the projections, like Grandal and Vaughn, they think are going to be significantly better than they were last year. Moncada better than he was last year. So those are the position players, the pitchers down here. Nope, don't have the pitchers done yet. Okay.
So I have one question, Larry.
Yeah.
I have to get up out of my chair to go get it. But have you gotten your gold Astros gear?
No, I didn't. And no,
I'm just kidding.
I do have. Where is it? I do. Oh, hang on, just a minute. Let me get. I do have. I wore my 17 spring training cap, but I do have the 22 spring training cap. So wait a minute, guys. This is a good sign, right? Because I'm showing you. This is the 17 World Spring Training cap. This is the last Astros cap I have bought. This is now the last Astros cap I have bought. So we all really know, no matter what Clint and Larry projected, the Astros are going to win the World Series. Okay, so there you go. A little unscientific method, but that is what's going to happen. The Astros in the World Series. Astros win the World Series. No trash can banging required, though. So, all right, guys. Thanks, Clint.
No, thank you, Larry. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Jay, for coming out as well.
All right. Have a good day, and we'll keep you posted as the season goes on.